Namaste, Vanakkam, and welcome to this T20 conversation with Rajesh Trivedi, the co-founder, managing trustee of Alert, an NGO that is focused towards training one in every family. The goal given to us by the former President of India, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, in specifically emergency care. Wonderful to meet you all today through this program, and this T20 Talk series is bringing to you some of the finest in the field so that we all can learn how to become that good Samaritan that we all strive to be to save somebody's life, right? So in commemoration of the World First Aid Day, it is our pleasure to have with us today a wonderful gentleman, a very senior and a leading cardiologist, and a multifaceted personality, and you should talk to him to know that he is such a sweet and a wonderful person. I have with me today Dr. Bhuvaneswaran, the director of PSG Hospitals. Such an honor to have him on the show. For the benefit of all of you, all the way from Coimbatore, Dr. Bhuvaneswaran joining us. Just a minute for me to bring him on screen.
Hello.
Welcome.
Namaste, Vanakkam, Namaskar.
Namaste, Doctor. Vanakkam and Namaskar to you as well. So good to have you on this T20 Talk series as we commemorate the World First Aid Day. Right, so many of you know you as a very senior and leading cardiologist, and of course, the PSG Hospitals is doing some human work in Coimbatore, and you've been leading that from the front, specifically through the COVID season as well, right? So today, sir, it's a complete pleasure to have you with us, and I'm going to walk us through a brief conversation. And this being a World First Aid Day, it just means a lot to everybody here at Alert. And of course to the whole world, right? Because saving lives is not, it's for everybody to take part in saving lives. So wishing a very good day to everybody. I want to start off with a simple question to you, doctor. Day in and day out, I'm sure you face a lot of emergencies. Your teams must be facing a lot of emergencies. In your entire experience, you would have faced so many such situations that you have handled. Okay. One question that keeps coming to us when we do our training programs is also, is it always how difficult it is to be of help to somebody whom we know, like a friend or a family, right? The simple question is it easier to be of help or render first aid to a friend or a family whom we know rather than a stranger whom we don't know? Your thoughts on that?
Actually, here the person never matters, only the knowledge matters. So what I'm trying to say is that there are only two things which come to my mind when you ask this question. Number one is when somebody is confronted with the situation of an emergency, and the person may be a relative, may be a stranger. But finally, what matters there is the insight, the knowledge, the attitude and the aptitude of the person in that situation. So what I try to say, even if it is a very close relative, if you are unable to know and react to that emergency in a logical way. See, generally whenever you see an emergency, emotional reaction is what first comes. What next is a logical reaction. So for a logical reaction to happen, your knowledge is very important. So if you are a medical person, for example, whether it is a stranger or whether it is a relative, it is probably easier to take a decision. But if you are a non-medical person, irrespective of whether it is going to be a relative or a stranger, most of the time you react emotionally. You may be able to act logically only if you have had some sort of a formal understanding of an emergency, a formal training of an emergency, and then an aptitude and attitude to act. So otherwise, generally emergency means run away from the scene, whether it is your relative or a stranger.
Right. So wonderfully put. So the emphasis and the need for training cannot be underestimated. Right? People have to get that for their logical thing to go right. Training is very, very important. Thank you for throwing some light on that, doctor. So once somebody gets trained, okay, and let's say we go into a scene and actually handle a person, render some basic first aid. Now you are on the other end of the spectrum for the victim to come back, come back to his or her recovery and go back home hale and healthy. It will be great for us to know, as a doctor at the other end of the spectrum, how significant is this first aspect of somebody giving first aid at the scene before any professional help arrives, and how much does it contribute to the recovery of the person itself?
Actually, I remember this Parker. I think you must have heard about this Mr. Parker, who had a very famous Parker series in Australia. Mm-hmm. See, this gentleman was on a golf ground, and when he was golfing, he had a cardiac arrest. And so it took about 30 minutes for him to be shifted from the golf ground to the hospital where he was taken by heli lifting. Now, the most important thing is he was kept alive by his friends, who were the co-golf players, by just 2% CPR, without any aid, no AED also, without any aid, and he made it.
Okay.
That means what I try to say, when somebody has an emergency, and if the surrounding place, two things are important. One is if it is a basic, actually aided or like AED aided CPR, it is something. If even without that, just 1 or 2% CPR, even without AED, you can maintain a person till the person reaches the hospital. That means you can never overemphasize than this about the need of somebody who is available around to give that first aid. In fact, I unfortunately remember another event where one of my own colleagues, a senior anesthesiologist, when he was walking, was leaving for Chennai in the Coimbatore platform, a typical scenario, he had a cardiac arrest. And he is an anesthesiologist who has saved thousands of lives. But this gentleman, we could not do anything, primarily because there was nobody around him who could do a first aid even. So there are two separate scenarios. So as a doctor,
right,
at the hospital or in the emergency department, it would be really a destiny, a destined if somebody has an issue and is attended by somebody who is trained in this area. It makes a hell of a lot of difference.
So loving, so lovely, so wonderfully put. Listen to it, dear friends, volunteers, all of you. The coming straight from a doctor, that the act that you can perform, and if especially in cardiac situations, the two incidents that you spoke, the CPR that you can perform, even if it's just just hands-only CPR, goes a long way in contributing towards the overall recovery of the person. Right? What better can for us all to be convinced about it, than listen to the doctor himself saying that. But doctor, there's one small issue that we keep finding in our society. Okay, I just want to bring that up. Not sure whether you would have encountered in your experience, but there is this thing about there is some kind of an inhibition when it comes to providing CPR, right? There is a gender bias. There's also a recent news article that I read that says that if the victim happens to be a woman, the chances are that the woman there's no opportunity for her to receive CPR at all, even though she needs CPR. Should, of all things, is gender really a bias? Should it really be even a bias to give CPR?
Unfortunately, yes. Because why I say this, again, I remember a very famous novel where actually a surgeon goes to a restaurant. When he's eating, in the next table, somebody else, he develops an acute choking and he falls down. And this gentleman tries to go and resuscitate him with that so-called Elms method. But interestingly, the person who gets choked is a white, the person who tries to resuscitate him is a black, and it becomes a very big issue, and this guy gets thrashed. So the scenario is, it is not only the question of a male or female, Even in our community, in our type of a society, so many other things also may matter, even religion, who knows. So that means
Right.
definitely what I want to tell you is there are certain inhibitions which are hidden in our society, and these things manifest only when such scenarios happen. So because as you see, sometimes the resuscitation attempts looks very aggressive. Somebody can mistake that we are trying to harm the person. Although nowadays, when you say
Right.
that, you show your badge or say that I am a doctor, I do something, people will give way. Number two, definitely if it's a lady, there will be an inhibition. And so it's not going to be easy. Definitely it's not going to be easy.
Right, right. So, it's very loud and clear that such biases are really not required. At the end of the day, he or she is alive, and we just have to focus on a space. His doctor also very beautifully brought about, the biases that come about with even race and color and all this, and not only in India, across the world, right? So, with the attitude to be just to save a life, I think we've got to overcome these biases, and ensure that we do the right things to save a life. Thank you so much. I'm very, very glad that you're bringing some real life anecdotes, doctor. That goes a long way to instill nothing like listening to a story, right? So when you actually narrate these stories, it goes a long way in instilling to all of us. Now you are a doctor, especially a cardiologist. I'm sure in real life, and I'm not a doctor, so I what it is to be handling a heart, the heart that pumps blood. But I know that's the physical heart that ensures that a person stays alive. But my question to you is, when it comes to helping somebody on the road or helping somebody, in your own home or in your workplace or anywhere, now, is it more a matter of the heart, or is it more a matter of the head, or is it a combination of all of this?
Actually speaking, again, it's not that I planned to quote the real life scenarios, but I just wish to tell you that, again, this was a news in Coimbatore about a year back or a couple of years back. One anesthesiologist was traveling from Coimbatore to Palkad, and on the way, he saw a crowd. He got on his car and saw one man had an accident. He was fighting for life. And the scenario is that this anesthesiologist stayed with that person who was fighting for life and made him stable there on the site. He had a spinal injury, and made sure that he reached the hospital and that patient made it. This was a news. So that means now when you are in an emergency, what I try to say is that we first one is the it should be in your mind and heart to help the person. That's the first most important thing, whether it is even inside
Right.
the hospital or outside. Number one. Number two
Right.
is that you have to have a definite basic knowledge of what you are going to do. For example, as you know that in
Right.
some emergency, you may have to extend the neck, especially to make sure that the tongue doesn't go on front.
Right.
And you have to definitely be very careful in a road traffic accident, where you should be extremely careful before touching the neck, because you should be very sure whether the neck there's something wrong in the cervical area or spine. So usually my what I try to say is, if you are sure of your knowledge of the first aid, knowledge about what to do, then only you should venture into it. It is not just that you are around and you just want to get into the scenario and do something. So in fact, the decision to do something is very important, and the decision not to do something is more important, primarily, especially if you are not knowledgeable. In that way, I always honestly feel that such trainings or some experience would make. So head or heart, knowledge is more important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So brilliantly put. So significantly said. The heart leads to the fact that to come forward and help, but the knowledge is, and it's like the compassion needs to be backed by enough awareness and knowledge, so that it is at the end of the day, it is of benefit to the victim. Vishwaran. And you also, I really liked your things that one should not do. Important decision, right? Depending on how the scene is, and while we attempt to do things that things that are like don't have to be a doctor to do, but we'll all have to remember that we are not doctors either, right? There are things that you have to be careful about when you go forward and help somebody, right? So, doctor, it's fantastic. It's been a wonderful, quick measures of doses of learning from you today. This being the World First Aid Day, we have a lot of our volunteers listening in, a lot of people interested in learning first aid listening in. Many probably still listening in who are still in the cat on the wall, right? They don't know whether should I get in or should I learn or should I, is something going to be useful to me and stuff like that. So as a doctor on the World First Aid Day, the next few minutes to you for give any kind of message that you think that the world should know from you.
See, actually, interestingly, even for all the doctors, not all the doctors have a proper BLS and ACLS. So I personally feel that every doctor should have a BLS course and ACLS course at the basic, as well as periodically. In fact, in some countries, it is mandatory that every 3 years you should renew your license with BLS, ACLS, number one. And again, a very small experience I want to share. Recently, one of my aunts in US had a cardiac arrest, and her daughter called me in India. It was around 11 o'clock here in the morning. It was 11 o'clock night in US in a hotel. So whether you believe it or not, I asked them to do certain things, and she was, we call it as cough. I asked her to make sure that she continues coughing till the ambulance arrived. And in US, the ambulance did arrive and she made it. So what I mean to tell is, number one, in an emergency, you may have to really be calm, especially if you're a medical person. If you're a non-medical person and if you happen to have a knowledge, please make sure that you attend to that scenario and do the needful. So grab the opportunity to learn about it, whether you are a medical person, BLS, ACLS. If you're a non-medical person, BLS, anybody can learn for that matter. But above that, honestly speaking, the societies or something like alert who make a mass education to public, we may go a very long way in saving. Definitely, we may not save 1,000 lives, but if you save one life, that one life may be a very, very important life for 1,000 people. So thank you, Rajesh, for giving me an opportunity to share some of my ideas and views. And I am there with you to hold hand and to be with you in your walks. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. The takeaway for today is that powerful statement that came from Dr. Bhuvaneswaran, that you may not end up saving 1,000 lives, but if you get that one life, and that one life may mean a lot to 1,000 other people. That's the message to take forward today. Thank you, doctor. It's such a pleasure to have had you this morning with us. From on behalf of everybody who is tuning in, listening in, the volunteers, the board at Alert, from all of us, wonderful. Thank you for sparing time, a few minutes to share your experiences, knowledge, and learning across for the World First Aid Day as well. Look forward to working a lot more with you, so that along with you we could take this journey on to reach many more such people. Really can't be more grateful for your time this morning. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Rajesh. God bless.